Okay, so let's see how we set up our EMR cluster. It's fairly simple and straightforward. We go to services, we go to EMR over here. Uh, then we can create a cluster. We can call it anything. Say my new cluster. And then this is the logging, where all the logging happens. I'm gonna choose what softwares come prepackaged. This is what I'm gonna use. And then what kind of hardware I need to run all this. As you can see, it has one master and two worker nodes. uh, but this is M3X large. I want to use a more compute intensive kind of hardware, so I'm using C3X large, and I want to change this value to 4 or 5 depending upon my requirements. You can always check the pricing for these, but for now I'm not going to show you that. So now for demonstration I'm going to choose proceed without an EC2 pair, and I'm going to create a cluster. It's going to take some time, so I have skipped that step, and let's go back to EMR and let's see what happens over here. As you can see, I already have a cluster running, so let me show you what happens. So the cluster that we created gets listed in the previous list that I'm showing you. The thing to observe is this is the status waiting. It by default comes into a status of provisioning, then it goes to running, and finally it comes to waiting status. These are all the configuration related attributes specified over here. We need not do anything about it. And the next thing I'm interested in is opening a Zeppelin notebook. So this is how we open a Zeppelin notebook, and I'm gonna create a new node and specify the name. Say for example GDELT. This is the data set that I'm gonna work on. I've already done this step for you guys. So once you open the notebook, a screen like this would open with a cursor over here, and all you need to do is write this code over here to load the data from a data set. So what I'm doing over here is I'm authenticating with the S3 in first two lines, and then I'm trying to obtain the data from a bucket. You need to replace these asterisks with the real keys that you can always create in your IAM role. And once you execute this paragraph over here in Zeppelin, it's gonna start loading all the data from the defined S3 bucket. Remember, SQL context already has an ability to unzip your GZ files and load the data from there. I already have the files in JSON format, so I need not worry about the schema. I'm going to show you those things, but now let's take a pause for a while the data gets loaded, and we can show you the real action. It's going to take some time because the data I'm trying to load is extremely high. Once all of that data comes in over here, we can run some SQL queries to see how we can perform analytic functions on the data that we have loaded using Spark SQL. Alright, so this is how we have loaded the data, and after doing that I'm gonna register the data that I have loaded into a temp table. After doing that, let's look at this. We see that GDELT print schema, when we give this command, it gives us the entire schema of the data that we have. Right, let me run another command, GDELT data count. So if I run this command, it's going to give me the number of items in my data set. Let's wait for a few seconds. So while this reloads, let's revisit. We loaded the data over here, then we created a temp table in which we got all the data. We checked for the schema over here, and now we're running the query to get the count. How many records are there? Uh, just to let you know that I haven't loaded the entire GDEL data because the query would take too long to execute. So it's just the data of the month March. It's just 1 day data uh, that I have over here, March 2017. Okay, so this is quite some data that we can see. There are approximately 6 million records that I have up here. Now let's try to run a simple query on it. Okay, so this query I have, this demonstrates kind of US and Russia relationships in the month of March. And so let's understand what we have. So we have a date over here, then we have a Goldstein scale number. What this number is, it's the impact of one country over another, over the stability of another. This is this definition is provided by the GDELT data codebook. We write this query and we do it only for the month of March, and then we group by date as to on a particular date what was the average. So this is what is reflected over here. We can see the data on various Zeppelin provided charts. This one would make more sense. So we can see that the relationship in the beginning of the month were at a particular point, and then they dropped to not to a too much, I mean not too much, but yeah, uh, they dropped in over here. We can see the focus up here, focus in this area, that we can see how the relationships have gone down. We see over here when we hover over here, it's gonna give us the values. Okay, with that being said, this data is not a right representation. The reason behind that is Goldstein has both positive and negative values. So it really depends on how many articles in the main data set we have which are reporting positive versus negative. So if there are more articles reporting positive, according to the news data, the averages are going to be little biased towards the positive side. If there are more towards negative, they're going to be biased towards the negative side. So we need to normalize the data in a particular way. I'm not going to demonstrate that over here, so we can move on a step ahead. So now let's take a step forward and look at this query over here. Here in the first select statement, I have figured out the relation between USA and Russia. In the second statement, we have evaluated relationship between India and Pakistan. We have joined these two, and so and now we are trying to get the results out of it. So by default, it's gonna come like this, wherein we saw in the earlier video the result was like this. But now what I do is I plot the relationship that we got for second statement, where is the relationship between India and Pakistan. So we see on the same chart we can actually visually compare the trends between these two. Now let's try to find if we can some correlation between these two events. Okay, so this is the correlation that we have over here. So what we have done is we have evaluated the relationship between USA and Syria. This is our first relationship. Then we evaluated the relationship between USA and Russia. This is our second relationship, and we try to kind of evaluate the correlation between these two impacts. I won't say it's a very highly correlated, but yeah, it's a positive correlation. So we can say that whenever the relationship between USA and Syria has improved or worsened, it has directly impacted the relationship between USA and Russia as well. So we can say that Russia is a Syrian ally as such. So this is what the news actually depicts.